about Annalise, Mary and Frank today. Annalise, Mary Anne Frank, shortly known as Anne Frank, was a German-born Jewish girl who wrote while in hiding with her family and 4 friends in Amsterdam during the German occupation of Netherlands during World War II. She was migrated to Holland at the age of 4, where she joined Montessori school. She started writing a lively diary when she was 13, and on 4th August 1944, Anne was taken to a concentration camp along with her mother and sister. She died in 1945 of typhus in Bergen-Belsen. Her father, the only survivor of the group, got her diary published in 1947 as The Diary of a Young Girl. She describes her childhood and some anecdotes in school. It's a wonderfully observational account by a 13-year-old. Anne speaks in the first person and addresses her diary as a friend. Although she begins writing the diary without any intention of it being read or published, she later writes with the idea that the record of her experience might be read by others to learn more about the writer. Anne writes from the perspective of a young girl, so her tone is often emotional and insecure, and she is both critical about herself and others. Her accounts are highly personal and philosophical. She expresses her deep struggle to understand her evolving self, both in relation to her family and to the tumultuous world outside the annex. The perils of living in hiding to escape Nazi persecution of Jewish people. This immediate struggle in Anne's life occurs with the context of the sweeping conflict of World War II. The protagonist, Anne Frank herself, is a 13-year-old Jewish girl who writes a diary while she is hiding in Amsterdam from the Nazis during World War II. Among the 5 minor characters, first is Margaret, Frank Anne's sister. She is 3 years elder to Anne. Then comes her father, Otto Frank, who is a Jewish businessman who left Germany after Hitler's rise to power, hoping to find a refuge. Mrs. Frank, Anne's mother, she is the source of many conflicts with Anne during her 2 years, which the family spends hiding. Mr. Van Daan, a Jewish business and an associate of Mr. Frank. Last, Mr. Kiesing, her teacher who punishes Anne because he gets annoyed by her talkative nature. There are 2 basic settings in the diary. First, the Franks' home, where they are living in Amsterdam at the beginning of World War II. The second being the secret annex, a section of a building added on to the main building where her family hides away along with 4 other people to escape the Nazis. The 12-point highlight of the chapter: Anne Frank lived in Holland after Hitler invaded. Her father and mother left her and her sister to her grandmother. She was gifted a diary on her 13th birthday. She named it Kitty and made it her best friend in her loneliness. She wrote every problem and happenings in her diary. She was very close to her grandmother. After her death, she felt very much alone. They lived in hiding for many years to survive. She was loved by every teacher except Mr. Kiesing, who taught her mathematics. Mr. Kiesing got annoyed with her talkative nature. He punished her by giving her extra homework many times. Her essay in verse form on the topic "Quack, quack, quack," said Mr. Chatterbox humiliated Mr. Keesing. He allowed her to talk and relieved her from any extra homework hereafter. First theme says lonely adolescence. A critical point about Anne Frank's diary is that it was written during the years of her adolescence. She struggled with many typical teenage problems, yearning for her own space away from adult meddling, burgeoning sexuality, and the quest for her own identity in an enclosed space with little privacy. Anne continually questions herself and spends most of the diary trying to figure out what kind of person she is. She berates herself for her selfishness, agonizes over the fate of her friends, and tries to be good in the way her parents would like her to be. Towards the end of the diary, she comes to the crucial conclusion that though she may not be the way others would like her to be, she is her own person and she respects herself. The second theme says questioning identity. Over and over again, Anne asks herself questions about type of person she is. How should I feel about those on the outside who are suffering? Am I virtuous? Am I too selfish and childish? What does it mean that Germans despise me simply because I'm a Jew? Although Anne finds no answers to these questions, she uses them to define who she is and who she wants to be. Anne's quest for her identity is the coming of the age theme and is most significant theme of the book. The third theme is anti-Semitism. When Anne comments on her Jewish heritage, it is to lambast her anti-Semitism and hatred that has forced her family to go into hiding. Although Anne does not express a full view of the historical anti-Semitism that combined with contemporary unemployment to make the Jews a pariah in Europe, that history is always lurking at the back of this book. It is important to remember that the main reason why Anne's diary is considered to be important is because it stands as a testament against the hatred and anti-Semitism that caused her death. Fourth theme is virtue. Anne struggles with the question of virtue throughout the book. Her parents want her to emulate her sister Margaret's virtue, which mostly consists of being quiet and self-effacing. Anne admires her father, who does not let anyone step on him, but sticks to his principles and demands that others do the same. It is important that Anne's feeling for Peter Van Den cool when she decides to emulate her father's idea of virtue. He does not feel that her friendship with Peter is more important than the love and respect of her father. Theme 5 says war. Though Anne claims to despise politics, she cannot help but become caught up in the war. It is the war, after all, which is responsible for her family's living situation. The adults in the annex, by contrast, speak constantly about the war and their prospects after the war. Throughout the diary, the phrase "after the war" hangs over the book, an unfulfilled wish of every annex resident. Towards the end of the diary, when the Allies begin making their great progress against Germany, Anne's diary entries document every battle and every landing, a great mirror into her excitement about the prospect of leaving the annex for good. The sixth and the last theme is duty. All of the Annex members struggle with the concept of duty. Duty to one's country, to one's friends, and most importantly, one's fellow Annex residents. Life in the Annex is a series of petty quarrels, and many of them have to do with the conflicting feelings of duty towards each other. For her part, Anne struggles to be a dutiful child and to get along with everyone in the Annex. When you read the diary, there are many important messages in it. But the most important message is that all people have the right to live in freedom. Anne's story tells us that just because people may be of different religion or race doesn't mean that they should be treated differently. Once you finish reading, you can conclude that young children need someone to talk to. The learning experience, even after a punishment, should be an enjoyable process. Never abandon hope, even in a Holocaust. Gaze at the way we are dwelling. We live the most wonderful existence and life, and we are still unhappy. But just think about Anne, who struggles for a whole life. So we should be grateful for what we have and not be sad for nothing. If you have any question, you can ask me in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Also tell me which chapter you want me to deal with next.